wife and I actually attended the meeting that month, and so it was kind of a surprise to everybody that we all knew that we showed up there. And Alicia Fitz is chair of the Spring Hill Historic Commission, and so at the end of the meeting, I came up with the idea. I said, let's have a joint meeting where both groups were sponsoring. Of course, the Historical Society, we have a membership meeting every 2 months at a different site. And I like going on field trips, so not all history is in Columbia. Maury County is all of Maury County. And so I myself personally have never set foot in this facility, and somehow we got on to talking about Grace Episcopal, and so I have worked with William Pomeroy, and also I need to acknowledge the Mission Council here at Spring Hill Grace Episcopal Church. Thank you everyone that's a member of that has allowed us to come here today to your wonderful place of worship here. Definitely this is a fantastic building. Alicia Fitz is going to deliver a program today to talk about that. Anyhow, like I said, I'm glad that everyone is here today. Our board members, Historical Society, raise your hand if you're a board member. We're glad to have you. If you're with the Mission Council here at the church, let us know who you are. Back in the back. And again, we thank you guys for being here. And at the end, I'll do my sales pitch for the Historical Society. But we're glad you're here. And did you need to say something else?
I'll say something real quick. My name's William Pomeroy. Usually go by Willie. You can call me William. That's perfectly fine. I'm an alderman here in Spring Hill, Alderman Ward 2. I just got sworn in back in April. So
now you get sworn in.
yeah. And now Spring Hill's got 3.5 more years of me. So
right.
I'm on the Mission Council here in the church. I'm also on the Historical Commission with Alicia. This is a great event, and Eric reached out to me. We were more than happy to have you all come and see the church. And I've been going to Episcopal Church my whole life since I was baptized, and I moved to Spring Hill back in 2019. I grew up in Brentwood, Tennessee, on the Davidson County side. So as my dad used to say, I grew up on the other side of the tracks in Brentwood, the middle class area, not the real wealthy area. So I went to Metro Public Schools, not like the fancy schools. But when I came back over here, my wife and I looked for a place to move to, and Spring Hill was a great location. As soon as we moved here, I began coming to the Episcopal Church. This is a great church, a great parish. I was very happy to get involved with all the people here. Before I turn it over to Alicia, I'm going to get a little plug in. On Saturday, this upcoming Saturday, September 25th, from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, the Spring Hill City Cemetery, which is right on Macklemore here, I'm on the board for that as well. We're having our annual fundraiser. It's $10 a person. It's a tour of the cemetery. We'll have role players. The cemetery is full of a lot of who's who of Spring Hill throughout the different years. We'll have different role players talking about their lives and what they did for Spring Hill. So once again, that's this upcoming Saturday from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. If you want to go check out the cemetery when you leave, when you turn here on 31, the next intersection is Macklemore Depot. Just turn left there, and you'll go straight. You'll see the cemetery on your right. And we do the fundraiser once a year, and all the money goes to the board to keep the upkeep of the cemetery. We don't get any public funds, so it's our best chance we got. With anything else, Alicia, I'll turn it over to you. She'll tell about the history of the church, and thanks a lot for coming, everybody.
I'm going to try. And just to reiterate something Will said, we have discovered the current board of the cemetery is doing a fantastic job of doing some sort of biographical sketches on those who are buried there. We actually have 5 of our mayors that are buried in that cemetery, in addition to a great number of the people who had houses on Main Street. So the old doctor's house, the blue house that's now yellow, he's buried in that cemetery. William McKissick, who built the brick house just down, is buried in that cemetery. So it's really a great opportunity to tie some of our historic architecture to the individuals who built those homes and lived in those homes. So thank you all for being here. I have a question. How many of you have never been in this building before? Okay, so I can tell you anything and you're going to believe me. That's good.
I want you to play the organ.
No, you don't want me to play the organ. I actually wanted to start with a poem. It was written by one of our congregants a couple of years ago, but it seems to be rather applicable for today, so bear with me for getting a little artistic with you. It's called Let It Rain with Love. As storm bears down from out of the west, church has just begun. The congregation voices the second verse of the opening hymn. I enter a pew where people I know scrunch together to make room for me. Just a couple of months ago, since I sat in the driver's seat in the car negotiating back roads, our roads, past cows, horses, I heard the gobble of wild turkeys I saw half asleep between the 2-lane byway. I drove past the man astride his Rydom cowboy mower, past the 3 boys on their bikes, past the feed and grain store that used to be next door, to church. We call it a church, all of us. But it's hardly more than a chapel built in 1878. The rain is earnest now as we sit shoulder to shoulder. 60-odd parishioners or so, not counting Esther's white toy poodle, Romeo. Alice Ann points to where we are in the hymnal, and I pick up the melody. Sing the words, bow my head at the correct time, kneel, make the sign of the cross, say the Lord's Prayer. Then Alice Ann shares her hymnal with me again, points at this place in the verse where we need to be. From her unsteady hands, I take forgiveness and a loving tenderness, hope for our country, and something like peace. All the blessings that friendship provide in this house of worship. I hope that that's a part of the feeling that you take away when you leave Grace. To me, it encapsulates what this congregation and this place has meant to me. I want to start with a little background. Spring Hill, as a city, began to develop in about 1808, 1809. I think it was formally incorporated in 1809. We've actually had 3 incorporations for some reason. I don't know what that was about, but by the time the Civil War rolls around, the city's booming to a population of 400. That's boomtown for us. But you've seen Colonel McKissick build the brick house down the road, 2 doors south. You're seeing a lot of large estates, the large plantations come up in play. The Civil War hits, and this area, as most of you know, is decimated. A lot of damage. We have a lot of young men that came back from that, including 2. One named Captain McCoy Clemson Campbell, one named Major Campbell Brown. They happened to be cousins. They were also in their late 20s when the war ended. They came home and began to have conversations with Bishop Odie, with whom they had fought during the Civil War, someone who was heavily involved at St. Peter's in the founding of St. Peter's. And they began to request that Bishop Odie establish what's called a mission church in Spring Hill, a plant. And it's my belief that they came up with the name Grace because that's what they believed they had been granted after the Civil War. That's what they believed this community had been granted after the Civil War. So, with a whopping budget of about $1,800 gathered from friends and families, they began construction on this church in 1875. By 1879, and I'm going to get dates slightly wrong, 1878, it was consecrated, it was formal. But even over those 3 years, we had our first confirmation, a guy by the name of Sam Warren. We had our first wedding, which is an old Maury County name. Nanny Campbell and James Mackey were married in this church. And in 1893, we had our first funeral of an infant named Campbell Polk. That gets us to kind of where we are. I would remind you at that point in time that Main Street, as we know it now, was a dirt road. Kind of a 2-lane dirt road, but a dirt road. I believe back then it was called the Jackson Highway. Beechcroft, as we see it here, was nothing more than a dirt track. This lot was the flower garden to the William McKissick house 2 doors down, to the brick house 2 doors down. And so when Matt Campbell and Campbell Brown had begun to look for properties, they had gone to the McKissicks and asked them if they would provide property. And they agreed to give us their flower garden. And that's how we came at this location. For much of my life, and some of you will remember this, we actually parked on Main Street. Some of you were commenting about parking around the building, and that has certainly always been a challenge for us. We used to park at the co-op when it's there, and we still do, but for a long, long time we parked on Main Street, and that's all we needed. So, the $1,800 was roughly, anybody want to give a guess what it would be in today's dollars? $40,000. $40,000. The church is constructed mostly, you'll see a lot of black walnut, you'll see a lot of yellow poplar, you'll see some cherry around the organ. All of those were woods that were readily available. I want to break the church up architecturally for those of you who are not familiar with it. Where Mr. Harvey is standing in the back in the white shirt, the entry with the red door is called the narthex. This is the nave or the sanctuary. This is the chancel or the altar. And the little room that you came through, many of you came through in the back, is called the sacristy. I break that up, not because all of you don't know it, but also because I may reference it that. So I want to start with the narthex. The red door is actually a recent thing for Grace Church. The door for many years was green and was painted red several years ago. Anybody have any idea what that symbolism would be?
Blood or fire, one.
I'm sorry?
Blood or fire? Blood of Christ.
Blood of Christ? It's a little bit of both. Physically, in the old church, if you had a red door, it was a symbol of sanctuary. It was a symbol that you could go into that place and have refuge, and the soldiers or whoever was chasing you wouldn't chase you. Spiritually, it was the blood of Christ had cleansed this place inside. So it's a little bit of both. So now we have the red door. The church also, if you use a little bit of your imagination and you look up, does the top resemble anything? Ship? Your ship? Yeah. It was constructed so that that looked like the bottom of the ship because, again, the early Christians, in an effort to continue to hold services, would often worship under upturned ships. And so spiritually, that came to acknowledge that this was a safe place. It was a place where you could take shelter from the storms of life. There's not much in the Episcopal Church that doesn't have symbolism, and I grew up with it, so I will likely skip over some of it. If there's something that you see that I haven't explained, please let me know. Going back to the red door in the narthex. In that narthex, and please feel free to get up and wander around while I'm talking, there is a stained glass window that shows sheaves of wheat and the state flower for Tennessee iris and a rose. That was given in memory of Mary Miller Mitchum. Mary was a fourth generation congregant in this church, and it's a fairly recent window. As you come into the church, if you look behind you, the back window and the front altar window are done after a man named Defarge. We're not sure that they're Defarge windows, but they're done in that style. The back window was actually given by the students, it's called the Estes window. It was given by the students at the Beechcroft School for Girls. Mr. Estes was the headmaster there. At some point after this church was built in the late 1870s, 80s, 90s, early 1900s, there were 6 schools in our little town that had grown to population 600. Those schools had different representation. The Beechcroft School was for girls. Branham and Hughes came around after the turn of the century. And while there was a boys' military academy, most people don't realize that girls actually went there for about 3 years. And then we had a number of other schools, including the Freedmen schools that were in town. Education has always been important. Part of the reason that our congregation survived during some lean times is that we had the students from those schools who came. And so that window in particular was given for Mr. Estes. The round window above that shows the descending dove. I think everyone can recognize the symbolism in that. That is known as the Rollins window, as is this window to my right on the left of the church. Those were both given by Libby Rawlings in memory of her husband. The 2 windows in the middle, the red, white, and blue windows, are actually original to the church. They were made to raise to get the breeze. Once we put in electricity in the 20s, we didn't really need them. This window is actually about to be replaced with a memorial window for a young man who was a member of our congregation for a long time. And the window will have some of the colors and the styles of the original windows, but it will also have animals and the ocean and skies, and it will include the colors for autism, because Chad lived with autism. This window is the Odell window. It was done for Annie Lou Beard Odell, who was an organist. As you can see, it has the symbolism that you would expect with the harp. Her daughters gave that window. And the organ. Anybody have any questions about the organ? That's usually one of the highlights here. The organ is encased in cherry. We believe it was constructed in about 1884, and it was probably installed about the same time. So Eric had asked, well, why isn't it where most organs are, kind of at the back of the church or the front of the church? Because it was installed 10 years later. Yes, it still plays. No, I'm not going to play it. Someone explained that our current organist had said someone that must have been monkey-like designed it because you have to hit the pedals all over the place. I had our prior organist to that said that that was basically how he got his workout. He didn't have to go to the gym, he could just play this organ. But it is lovely to hear, and if you're able to come at Christmas time or for one of our services, I would encourage you to do so. There is also about to be a big organ renovation project. Now, this was originally a pump organ before we had power. There was a young African-American boy who would come, and there's actually a room just outside or behind the organ. He would be paid 5 cents a Sunday to pump the organ. And sometimes he would fall asleep. And so the organist would have to kick to get him to do that. And so you could be in the middle of a hymn and you would all of a sudden hear this strange noise, and it was that being kicked. So an African-American boy whose name completely escapes me right now, also his family struggled with hard times, and this church, this congregation would pull together to provide meals and try to ensure that he was taken care of. Okay, we get up to the altar. Oops, sorry, one other thing in the back. I'm staring straight at it and forgot it. The baptismal font is actually made out of Indiana marble, hard to see with the covering on it, and black walnut that is local. Okay, the altar. One of the things most people name is today the altar rail or the altar itself, usually the altar rail. The altar itself was a gift from Major Campbell Brown of Ewell Farm, and it was made out of a tree, a black walnut tree on Ewell Farm. The altar, and it was actually, the altar was carved by a man who was a professor at the Female Institute in Columbia. The altar rail was carved by a man who was a teacher at the Beechcroft School, out of a piece of wood from Ewell Farm. That altar rail is pretty precious to us, and some of you may have heard the story that during one of the fires that came through Spring Hill, we've had two and a tornado, the organist asked her daughter to come up to Grace with an axe, and if the fire reached the church, to chop the altar rail out and keep it safe. Fortunately, the fire didn't reach this far on the west side. The chair, bishop's chair we call it, was given as a gift by someone in the congregation, as was the lectern. The pews are all original. And if you look on the ends of the pews, you can see the square cut nails. The floors are all original. So that's a really brief tour of the church. I'm just going to glance at my notes and make sure that I haven't forgotten anything completely obvious. I will say that up until for many, many years, we never closed our doors. We never locked our doors. Then in the 70s, we had an issue with what we call the case of the disappearing wine. Communion wine that my grandmother actually would help put up there started just disappearing. And we're pretty confident the priest wasn't drinking it. So my grandmother sent my uncle up here with a shotgun, had him sleep on one of the pews, and he set up a tripwire up here of like firecrackers or noisemakers. And sure enough, the gentleman came in, tripped it, Bud took the shotgun. Turned out that this gentleman worked the night shift someplace, had an issue with alcohol, and so often we would also have the after effects of alcohol in the sacristy. But Bud took him and marched him at that stage down to Backamore, 2 blocks to our then jail. I don't know what became of him after that. After that, we started locking the doors, which is an unfortunate thing, but I think everybody knows. Faith Hall in the back, where you all came from, is new, built in 2004. For many, many years, much of my growing up years, we actually had a double wide trailer. in the back. And that's where we would do Sunday school, it's where we would do our gatherings. Apparently the universe or God decided to deliver us a message and dropped one of our neighbor's trees on the middle of the trailer. And we decided that we should take that as a message. And while we were struggling at that point in time, it was sort of post-Saturn, before big time noon, we were struggling. We decided that we would go ahead and invest in an official structure. I think what's interesting is that it started with 2 people stepping forward, and it became the snowball effect of multiple generations of people, many of whom were out of state, but that had grown up in this church and wanted to support it. And then came the point where we as humans wanted to say, you know, we need to name this after the 2 people who gave money to this. Except the 2 people who gave the most money for that didn't want it named after them. And so in a conversation with the then Mission Council, they said, you know, we're building this on the faith that people will come. And they did. And it is, during non-COVID times, full to the brim and used by multiple groups in our community. I'm sure that I've missed some of your questions, so I would like to just open it up for questions. I can spend hours talking about this church. I could try and ring the bell, but the last time I tried to do that, it came off the rails. So
that was my question, is the bell operational?
The bell is operational. It is rung every Sunday. Sam Holden broke it. Remind him.
Sam broke it, okay.
Sam broke it. Y'all know Sam. It was done, I think the bell is dated 1839 here, but we don't know where it came from. There's speculation that the Campbell Brown family gave it, or that the students at Beechcroft. Now the students of Beechcroft, actually the school would have been, for those of you familiar with Spring Hill, if you go out Beechcroft towards Carter's Creek, there was an old house on the left-hand side that is now Mom and Me Salon. It was the proudest house for many years. That's where the Beechcroft School for Girls was located. Interestingly enough, Beechcroft Road at that point in time was not called Beechcroft Road. It was called Beech Grove Road. Because when you get to the other end of Carter's Creek, you're in Beech Grove. Somewhere in between, the names got more. I think Susan's gonna ring her bell. You gonna try? There you go.
Most of your walls are fairly insulated then, because that's kind of muffled.
Yeah, it could be the scrolls that are up there too.
So was there a parsonage here for the?
There was not a parsonage. We have always, because we started as a mission, which in the Episcopal Church is literally a new church plant, and we never really grew large enough to have a full-time priest, we left that to St. Peter's and St. Paul's, on either end of us. And Grace continued to have what we would call supply clergy. And that often came from St. Peter's or St. Paul's. There were days where we didn't, in the 50s, where we couldn't get a hold of anybody to do that, in which case our senior warden at the time would simply do morning prayer. So I look at what the church has been through, many churches, but what this church has been through in terms of natural disasters and the Civil War and population inclines and declines and so forth, and I think it nothing short of miraculous that we're still open some 140 years later.
What's the size of the congregation today?
I'm going to defer that to the back. It's typically, I think on a typical Sunday, and this COVID is hard to measure, but I think it's probably 25 to 30 regularly.
Yeah, that would be right.
Online.
Well, it's like we do have an online audience now.
Yes, I'm usually one of the online audience. So. During the high day, during the sort of at points where we've peaked, we've had about 80. The church will hold 100 comfortably. I have been here for 2 funerals where there's been 150 plus, but you're packed in like sardines. This church is also, there's something, I know we have some Episcopalians here. Any non-Episcopalians? And then, okay. So in the Episcopal Church, and in many churches actually, somewhere during the service there's something called the peace. And typically you turn around and shake hands and greet one another. For a couple of ministers worth, they would say, y'all need to stay in the pews. The peace is just a pivot. It's like a basketball pivot where you pivot to the people around you. At Grace, we're out in the aisles, hugging and shaking hands. And it took both of those ministers probably a good 6 months to realize that that's just who we are. It's the kind of congregation we have here. So we're sort of Episcopalian, but we don't necessarily behave like we're really strict Episcopalians. Probably why I don't go to church on Sundays, actually. They'll probably kick me off for saying that. So, other questions?
I do, but, well, go ahead, no, go ahead.
Alicia, you said that this window right here is gonna be replaced. So
This window right here.
This one, oh, okay, so what will happen to that window? Is it gonna be
I
the original
suspect it may wind up with a member of the congregation. Actually, I'm sorry, that's it. This window is going in the sacristy because we have one that's cracked.
one?
The one in the sacristy will probably wind up with a member of the congregation who has helped with
Is
the
it
new
the
window.
same type window?
Yes.
The question I got, so and this goes toward the two commission and the society. Is everyone in here a member of the historical society? Anyone not? There's a few people. Well, the point that I'm getting at is that if you're a member of the society, you understand what we do and what our mission is. What I'd like you to switch gears for just a second, and I want you to talk about the Spring Hill Historic Commission and what that mission is, or even if we have to get Will up here,
Oh, Will's new.
and talk about that for a second, because
So
I would like for us to, have more
the
of a,
Spring Hill is a little bit different than Columbia and Franklin because what we have is a historic commission. It is not a historic zoning commission, meaning that we are an advisory role to any plans that come through Spring Hill. Typically, for example, if somebody was going to build a McDonald's on this corner, God forbid, somebody was going to do that, they would bring it to the historic commission and say, hey, we're within 500 feet of your church. What are your thoughts? We are actually working with, some of you know Sarah Elizabeth Hickman McLeod, working with Sarah Elizabeth and some folks from the state to get what's called certified local government standing and to change our ordinance so that we become a historic zoning commission. That's in progress. What we're trying to do for this year post-COVID is to essentially make ourselves more visible by collaborating with things like this with the Maury County Historic Society. We actually have a speaker series coming up, and we're collaborating with the Spring Hill Library. So our first one will be September, it's the 4th Tuesday of every month except for November. So the September one, which I think is September 25th, 28th, I don't have a calendar, is going to be Tom Price, director at the Maury County Archives, and he's going to specifically be talking about Spring Hill and our history in Maury County. We were small, but we were loud. And we had a lot of racehorses, and we had a lot of the agriculture in this town. And interestingly enough, when Jackson Highway, the population of this town said, we need a bigger road. We want what Columbia has. Everybody went, yeah, a bigger road. In the late 1880s, the community got together and went to the state and said, if y'all find the funds to do this road, we'll contribute $3,000. And oh, by the way, if you put it straight through the middle of town, we'll give you 10. Guess where the road went? In the 1920s, the road from here to Thompson Station was still pretty much a toll road. The neighbors got together and got the signatures up and down what is now Highway 31 to be able to turn that road into a state highway. It's always been a really proactive community. So back to the Historic Commission. The second speaker is going to be Sarah Elizabeth Hickman McLeod. Sarah Elizabeth is writing a book on Pop Gears, who you have the park for in Columbia, but Pop Gears also work with several local people, including Matt Campbell and Alan Campbell, on racehorses and harness racing. She's in the process of publishing a book on that, so she's going to be our speaker for October. For November, in order to somewhat coincide with the Battle of Spring Hill anniversary on the 29th, we on the 20th, which is a Saturday, at probably 3 or 4 o'clock, we're still working out the details, are going to have Eric Jacobs from Rivervilla talk about the battle. There's been a lot of news about Rivervilla, a lot of it controversial. I would simply encourage you that if you care about that property, please go see what's being done. There's some cool things going on. So, and then in January, we'll set up a new schedule. So watch the Spring Hill Library page, and we'll fill you in on what we're doing. We're also working with the cemetery with Will. We've had some tree work taken care of over there. Big trees tend to lose big limbs, and as it so happens, some of the trees in the cemetery are about as old as the cemetery itself. They're sugar maples, they're very resilient, so we're working on getting that done. The current board's doing a wonderful job of doing the autobiographies or the biographies, so please follow their page for that information. We're going to try and do a historic walking tour. Some of you may remember that the APTA used to do one here in the fall. We're going to try and figure out how to do one with our Parks and Rec department and connect it to the folks that are in the cemetery and bring them over to Main Street. So trying to be a whole lot more visible than we necessarily have been.
So I got one more for you. I'm going to milk everything I can out of this business. It's not part of the tour, but what can you tell us about the house next door?
The house next door is actually not as old as everybody thinks. The house next door was built in the 20s by a man named Martin Langley. His daughters lived there until they sold in the 80s, I want to say. The gentleman, Mr. Cantrell, who owns the brick house, also owns the purple house. That is a house that you think is one project and it becomes a whole nother project when you get into it. But we're working on that. Mr. Cantrell has been a really good neighbor to Grace because obviously parking is constrained for us and he allows us to park over there. He's helped us with some trees. Every once in a while he shows up on Sunday. I'm pretty sure lightning doesn't strike him when he does that, but that's the purple house. It's interesting because everybody thinks that house is original to Spring Hill, and 1920s is good and old, but it's not as old as you might think it was going to be. So one of the other things the Historic Commission in Spring Hill is doing, and I know there's often a perception that Spring Hill has torn down a lot of its history. Mother Nature actually managed to do that pretty well. There was a fire on the east side and a fire on the west side that took out a lot of our businesses. If you have a chance to go to West 7th Gallery, they have some wonderful pictures of what it was like when the businesses were here before those fires. And then in '63, the tornado that came sort of through where Spring Hill Elementary is and cut across the children's home property. So it skirted us to the south at this church, but it still did significant damage. Nonetheless, there are structures that we now have that may appear fairly new, like the Langley House. Our first subdivision is out in Depot Street, and those houses are now 50 plus years old. All of those qualify for a historic district. So that's part of what we're working on as well, is making sure that we define that district, define any landmarks like Whitehall that may fall outside of it, and also like Newtown, which is a great historic area for us, but it's not right next to Main Street, so people don't think about it. So we're trying to be cognizant that while we may not have what Columbia has on the square, or what Franklin has on their square, what we do have is valuable and tells a huge part of our story. I said this at one time on something else that I'm involved in. We're trying to come up with a downtown district, and it's hard when you have like this crazy quilt that we have in Spring Hill. And that was actually the analogy I used, and I said, you know, if you look at downtown, if you look at Old Town, and then you look at Town Center where Best Western is, and First Farmers and Town Hall, and then you look at the children's property, which is going to be known as Kedron Square. If you look at each of those areas, each of those character areas is actually a part of our history. This is our heart and soul, this part. Town Center was where we thought we were going to go after 1985, and Kedron Square is where we're headed. So finding a way to blend those together, whether it be through aesthetics or stories or poster boards or wayfaring signs, is becoming more critical so that this area doesn't get lost. All right, that's my soapbox answer.
Cool. No, I appreciate that. Does the church have a media center or anything like that, a library?
Yes, we have a library.
Well, we want to present the church
kind of you.
for letting us come a historic Maury County, illustrated by Mildred Hartsfield and places and stuff.
It's got Mildred's name and Alice's name on it. I'm good.
Okay, so we wanted to present that
Thank
to the
you
church
very
and have
much.
this come out today.
I
Of
appreciate
course,
that.
everyone's welcome to walk around, and if you have anything you want to confess.
Yeah, let me reopen it for questions because I feel like I've missed a whole bunch and I probably haven't.
Yeah, anybody have any other questions about the facility, the church, the grates in the floor? I guess that goes to the...
When we put a furnace in. The furnace is actually under the church.
Was it a coal furnace at one time? Okay, so you had a chimney somewhere?
There's a chimney just on this side. Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Does anybody have anything else? Any questions?
When was it electrified?
Oh, that's a good question. I want to say the 1920s. It was electrified pretty early, and then they did sort of an upgrade job in the 60s.
How did it light it prior?
Gas. These ones that have been electrified were the original lights.
So these were
And in the summertime, we would actually flip services. Our normal service is at 10 o'clock. That was during the winter, and in the summertime, we do the 11 o'clock service. We were as you all know, we were a community of farmers. So trying to get the farmers in on a Sunday during the summer was hard. If you got it in close to lunchtime, you might be able to squeeze it in. I'll look for that specific answer for that. Anything else? Guys, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being here. I know a number of you, when you came in, said you had never been inside this church. Please don't make this be your last time. Find another reason to come back, whether it be on Sunday or any other time. I am always glad to drag those two in the back out to meet somebody up here and show you the inside one-on-one.
Now, this place is normally on the Christmas home tour, isn't it?
Normally it's on the Christmas home tour.
I don't know, and I have not talked to Adam and anything with Anthony to find out. I don't know if they.
Our challenge with the Christmas home tour, honestly, is that it falls on the same weekend that we typically do the Spring Hill Parade.
Right.
So the Friday we're good. The Saturday we typically are a hot chocolate stop, and that's really important to be a hot chocolate stop. So it's hard to do both. But last year we were able to do both days, and I don't know what's been worked out. Carol had her hand up.
We're going to be opening the church for the Spring Hill Art Walk on October 23rd.
Oh yeah.
So you'll be able to visit the church and see some of the artwork of the members of our congregation and some community people. So we would ask you to come back.
Has anybody ever been to the art walk here before? It's obviously been off for several years with COVID and some other challenges, but a number of businesses and locations on Main Street open up and display local art. So that's usually a wonderful evening to get out here and walk and get into some of the places that are not normally open. Thank you, Carol.
Now's your chance. Anything else you want to advertise in Spring Hill?
Back to our aldermans.
There's a cemetery tour on Saturday. That's the biggest thing. Stay focused on. There's a website called Spring Hill Fresh, which actually has a lot of great information on it. So
well, and since Eric mentioned the Historic Commission, in case anybody's interested, because I arrived it's the first Thursday
yes,
of the month, and I arrived on the first Thursday of last month to find Eric and Lisa and David Cost sitting at City Hall waiting to get in. That's a little bit of a panic when you see those two standing in front of City Hall. But we figured it out, and this is part of what came out of that. So I'm very grateful
So
that
this
you did.
is great.
Yeah, so if y'all are interested, come on up. It's open to the public. It's very informal.
Are you a member of the Historic Society?
Yeah.
You are. Okay. Are you?
no.
You're not. I'm glad. Because here today, I'm here to hand you an application today. All right. And anyone else that's in the here with us today, if you're not a member of the society, we would love to have you join. I know that most everyone is here. If you're not a member and you would like a courtesy copy of our magazine, Historic Maury, this is a quarterly publication that we put out. We'll give you a complimentary edition there. We'll leave one here for the church as well. But we would love to have you join, and feel free to take one today if you're not a member. And we would love to have you. That's one of the benefits of membership. We have these meetings, and for those that are out watching us at the streaming, we would love to have you join us. We meet every other month at a different site. This being September, we're getting ready to have our awards ceremony and annual luncheon. That's coming up November, the third Sunday of November. And we are going to go to First United Methodist this year. Laura Gore, our vice president, excuse me, is working with the church to set that up. We were there a couple of years ago. We went to Columbia Academy last year, but we're going to go back to the church this year. And who knows about after that, but we're doing some things, and we would love to have you join us. For those of you online, historicmaury.com, you can join the society online. We've got a good online presence now, and so that's been going on, so we'd love to have you join us. We were talking about dates, and it's fall and Halloween and everything coming up. I also serve on the board at the Athenaeum. The Rose Hill Cemetery Tour, talk about cemetery tours, is going to be October the 22nd this year, 7 p.m. at Rose Hill Cemetery in Columbia. And the, what else was I going to mention here? I think that was it. Oh, the Rose Hill, Saturday, September 25th is going to be a special candlelit tour of the Athenaeum Rectory of the house in Columbia. So that's coming up as well. It's all
Go see our cemetery and then go to the Athenaeum.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, it's the full even out, do that, yeah, exactly. Again, that's all I have today. Thank you everyone for coming out, and the gentleman that's been running the camera all day, who's this guy? We want to thank
In the
him.
background.
I'm James Dallas, this is David Thomas.
James and Davis Thomas, thank you guys for being the technology, helping us get all that out today. Wanted to acknowledge these guys. That's all I've got today, unless y'all have anything else.
No,
Again,
just
thank you so
again
much for
being here.
hosting us in your wonderful sanctuary here. Everyone, please walk around, look around. If you have a confession you need to make, I'm sure there'll be someone that'll be glad to help you out with that too. But and that's all I've got for
We
today.
send the